In the bitter winter of 1943, as the world convulsed in a war of annihilation, a secret pact was forged not in a grand palace, but in the frozen hell of a besieged city. This is not a story of famous generals or decisive battles. This is the story of the Leningrad Symphony, and the day music became a weapon of war. The city of Leningrad was dying. Encircled by the German Wehrmacht for over a year, its people were starving, freezing, and shelled into oblivion. Over 1 million souls had already perished. In this abyss of human suffering, a frail, bespectacled man, Dmitri Shostakovich, had begun composing his 7th symphony. He started it within the city walls, scribbling notes between shifts as a fire warden, the staccato of anti-aircraft guns providing a grim percussion to his creativity. But he was evacuated before its completion. The score, a physical embodiment of Leningrad's defiance, was microfilmed and smuggled back into the cursed city on a special military flight in the spring of 1942. The mission, to perform it there in the very heart of the siege. The task fell to the surviving musicians of the Leningrad Radio Orchestra. Of the 100 members, only 15 were left in the city. The conductor, Karl Eliasberg, was so emaciated he was carried to the first rehearsal on a sled. The city committee issued a decree: all musicians were to report for duty. They were pulled from their military units, dragged from hospital beds, scavenged from the front lines. A clarinetist died on the way to the rehearsal. A trombonist expired during a break. They were skeletons trying to summon the strength for a monumental, technically demanding, and ferociously loud symphony. Rehearsals were held in the unheated, frozen Philharmonia Hall. Musicians huddled in coats and gloves, their breath misting in the air. Their fingers, stiff with cold and hunger, could barely press the valves or draw the bows. The brass players lacked the lung capacity for the powerful fanfares. Eliasberg, a strict disciplinarian, would stop them with a weak tap of his baton. "I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen," he'd whisper, "that is not loud enough, it is not fierce enough, they must hear us." They were the German soldiers, dug in just a few kilometers away. The Soviet High Command understood the psychological power of this event. In a breathtakingly audacious move, they planned a counter-offensive, not of tanks but of artillery. Operation Squall was devised. An hour before the concert, Soviet batteries would unleash a massive, preemptive bombardment on German positions. The goal was to silence their guns, to ensure not a single shell would interrupt the symphony. And so, on August 9, 1942, a date the German command had circled on their calendars as the intended day for Leningrad's final fall, the impossible happened. The chandeliers in the Philharmonia were lit. The hall was filled with people, soldiers brought directly from the trenches, civilians in their finest remaining clothes, party officials, all sharing the same gaunt, haunted look. Every radio speaker in the city was switched on. Microphones were pointed towards the German lines. As Eliasberg raised his baton, a profound silence fell, broken only by the distant, fading echo of the Soviet barrage. Then the strings began, a quiet, relentless theme that would grow into the infamous invasion march. For 80 minutes the music swelled, a portrait of a peaceful land, the terrifying approach of a mechanized enemy, the agonizing grief, and finally a searing, defiant, hard-won victory. The musicians played as if their lives depended on it. For that moment they were not starving victims, they were avengers. The symphony thundered across the ruins, over no man's land and into the German trenches. Later, Soviet intelligence would report that many German soldiers listened, stunned. One officer was said to have confessed, "That day we understood we would never take Leningrad. They starve, they die, but they play music like this. We cannot defeat these people." The Leningrad premiere was more than a concert. It was an act of existential defiance. It proved that even when the body is broken, the human spirit can compose a masterpiece. It demonstrated that culture is not a luxury for peaceful times, but the very bedrock of civilization, the last and most powerful fortress against the tide of barbarism. In the end, the symphony did not break the siege, that would take another year, but it broke the spirit of the besiegers and gave the besieged a reason to live one more day. It forces us to ask, what is the ultimate weapon in a war of extinction? Perhaps it is not a bomb or a bullet, but a single, unyielding, beautiful idea.